Okay, so let's start our discussion on finite elements of one dimension. We will gradually build the concepts of finite element analysis using this vehicle of one-dimensional finite elements, which are very easy to understand, and the problem is small enough or simple enough to be uh, managed by hand calculations, manual calculation on pen and paper, and you can get the gist of the entire finite element process. The rest of the finite element analysis is just a generalization of the concepts that we deal with in the case of one-dimensional problems. So we start with two-point boundary value problems. So uh, this has been our the basic vehicle, the rod problem, axial deformation problem, or wave propagation problem, pile driving problem, or even the one-dimensional fluid flow through porous medium. So that is also described by the same equation, and torsion is also described by the same equation. So essentially, we look at one-dimensional domain, and one dimension. The domain is of course defined by one independent variable x, ranging from between some range. So domain is just one-dimensional, one coordinate, and the extent of the problem domain is defined by the endpoints. So that is what we call as two-point boundary value problems. So the domain is defined by two boundary points, and whatever is in between, that is the domain of the problem. So many problems can be adequately modeled with only one independent variable, and hence it is described by one coordinate direction. Simplest class of problems in this category are defined by a second order differential equation. We have already seen this, and this second order differential equation, it describes the transverse deflection of a top cable under tension, something that all of you probably are familiar with, the cloth line, or if some of you have ever taken part in any NCC or Scouts camping, then the tent that you erect, it takes the load on a rope actually takes the load of entire tentage. So that is again a cable under tension. So what is the deflection? So that is governed by this equation, and then we have axial deformations of a bar, torsion of shaft, heat transfer, flow through porous media, electrostatics, etc. So different uh, problem domains, they are all defined by the same kind of differential equation. So it really doesn't matter whether you know it by axial deformations in a rod or a truss. It is the same differential equation which governs all these phenomena. So whatever you learn in the under the name of solution of truss problems or solution of uh, longitudinal deformations of bar, the same techniques or same formulation can be applied to solve any of these problems with appropriate interpretation of the coefficients of the governing differential equation. So domain is straight line along one coordinate direction, and domain decomposition for creating subdomains is quite straightforward. The finite elements, subdomains of the finite elements, are quite straightforward. You just divide the length into several smaller segments. And therefore, the interpolation model for approximation of primary variable of the problem in terms of nodal values is easily developed because there is only one independent variable. So interpolation in one dimension is very simple, as we have already seen, at least In principle, it is very simple. Uh, Numerical computation, maybe there are different forms and different ways. I mean, some computation may be efficient, some computations may be more cumbersome. But essentially, the development of interpolation model itself poses no difficulties as far as one-dimensional interpolation is concerned. So one-dimensional interpolation, I mean, if we have to interpolate between two endpoints, primary variables defined at the 2 points, endpoints, this is one node and this is another node and this is the domain, then obviously through two values, uh, two nodes, first degree polynomial can be uniquely defined. So this is what we call as linear element. And if we have three nodes, then a second degree polynomial can be defined, unique second degree unique polynomial can be defined, and that is why we call this as a quadratic element. And if we have four nodes within an element, then a cubic polynomial can be uniquely defined. Interpolation model, cubic interpolation can be uniquely defined, and the variation of the primary variable within the element will be of cubic form. So it will vary as a cubic polynomial, and the element is therefore referred to as cubic element. So let's work with reference to an example. Let us consider the solution of this second order differential equation, negative of d over dx of a d phi by dx. So plus c phi minus q is equal to 0. The domain is omega, defined as x ranging from 0 to L, and the boundary conditions are specified, 2 point boundary conditions are specified as phi at x is equal to 0 should be equal to phi naught, and another boundary condition at x is equal to L, the other boundary point, is defined in terms of derivative, that is a d phi by dx is equal to q naught. Right? So, how do we go about it? Any ideas? How do we start with the solution of this problem? Any thoughts on this?
Sir, we can assume a function and satisfy the boundary condition.
Okay.
And
Which
then we,
boundary condition?
sir, those that are given like phi of x at 0, x is equal to phi naught. And we can satisfy this condition using a function that we can assume.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Let me first introduce you to the method of approximation that we develop. The first thing that you need to do, I mean, if you have been, if you go back to the previous slide, I had mentioned that the interpolation model for primary variables is easily developed for one-dimensional elements. So what we are doing here is, I mean, the approximation, finite element approximation, the first objective is to identify the primary variables of the problem. What is the primary variable of the problem? So is phi a primary variable of the problem, or is it a times d phi by dx that is the primary variable of the problem? And the approximation would of course depend on that, what is the primary variable, because it will have implications on the boundary condition, which boundary condition, and how to impose those boundary conditions. Right? And how do you identify primary variables of the problem? how will you say for sure that phi is the primary variable and a times d phi by dx is the secondary variable of this problem and
So
not
because
vice
pi,
versa? Yes?
so because pi depends upon single independent variable x, and q naught depends upon the function of phi, which is the function of x. So q naught can be said as it's
No,
a
boundary condition is of course going to be at a point. So there is no variation of x there. The moment you say that it is a boundary condition, so the x automatically freezes at some value. So there is no variation with respect to x. Okay, so okay, let me present the workbook. So the differential equation that we have is minus d over dx a times d phi by dx plus c phi and is it plus q minus q. So
Minus q set.
minus q is equal to 0
Yeah.
in omega, that is 0 less than x less than L, and the boundary conditions are with phi at x is equal to 0, it is defined as phi naught and a times d phi by dx is equal to q naught at x is equal to L. So I can as well say that x is equal to L is equal to q naught. Right? So the first thing that needs to be done is identification of primary and secondary variables of the problem. So how do you do that? Let us consider approximation. Let us consider phi hat as an approximate solution so that phi x is approximated by phi hat. Then we have domain residual. The error in the boundary conditions, the error in the satisfaction of governing differential equation is when we substitute this approximation in place of phi. So r omega is going to be negative of d over dx a times d phi hat over dx plus c phi hat minus q, and this is in omega, right? And this need not be equal to 0. But we can establish the weighted residual statement of weighted residuals, because we want approximate solutions to be such that the error vanishes in the weighted average sense. So the statement of weighted residuals is integration over omega w r omega d omega is equal to 0. And let me just take the particular value, 0 to L. Omega is ranging from 0 to L. W minus d over dx a d phi hat over dx plus c phi minus q dx. So this is equal to 0. So I can equate, do it further analysis, and that becomes 0 to L W multiplied by minus d over dx a.
Sir,
Yes,
sir, why haven't we considered the boundary residual here?
I'll answer that a little later. Right? Let me first complete this expression, lest I should make any error due to omission. Okay, statement of weighted residuals, you are right. I can as well include gamma w bar r gamma d gamma. No harm. That's actually the right thing, correct thing to do, except that we do not have any use for that at the moment, because our interest here is restricted to this particular operation, identification of primary and secondary variables of the problem. This is our sole objective, right? And it is with respect to that I am trying to arrive at answer to this problem. So I am not writing this equation at the moment for solution of the problem. I am only trying to identify what is the primary variable and what is the secondary variable. Right? So, but let us keep, when we say that it is a statement of weighted residual, it is always a good idea to be correct in principle. So I would retain that. Boundary term as well, weighted. So what do I get? First term, I can evaluate by integration by parts. So I get W multiplied by x is equal to 0, x is equal to L, and plus integral dw by dx multiplied by a d phi hat by dx plus c is a constant, so w phi 0 to L, this is 0 to L, dx minus 0 to L wx dx plus boundary term W bar R gamma D gamma, whatever. So this is equal to 0. So now, going back, if you recall our discussion on the definition of primary variable and secondary variable, the boundary term of the weak form of the governing of the weighted residual statement. So this is the weak form of the weighted residual statement, right? So we develop the weak form of weighted residual statement. So this is the weak form of the weighted residual statement, and the weak form of the weighted residual statement involves one boundary term, rather it is evaluated at the boundary, and there are domain integrals. So the secondary variable of the problem is the coefficient associated with the weighting function. Coefficient of the weighting function term is the secondary variable of the problem. So this is the secondary variable, right? So from the weak form we have from the examination of the boundary term of the weak form of weighted residual statement, we can identify secondary variable is minus a times d phi by dx, and primary variable, what is the primary variable? How the primary variable is defined? The unknown of the problem, unknown of the governing differential equation substituted for weighting function in the boundary term. So unknown is of course phi, weighting function term appears in the boundary term as a zeroth order derivative. So we substitute this unknown in place of the weighting function, and that is the primary variable of the problem. So the primary variable of the problem in this case is phi, right? So now why this is important? This implies boundary conditions in terms of phi are the essential boundary conditions. Right? Without this exercise, you cannot say which of the two boundary conditions is essential boundary condition and which one is natural boundary condition. Right? So this is boundary condition in terms of a times d phi by dx is a natural boundary condition. Secondly, the approximation that we develop approximation to be developed as an interpolation between the nodal values of primary variable. So, for that purpose, it is for this purpose that we need to identify which of the two is a primary variable, because the approximation will have to be developed in terms of that, in terms of interpolation of that quantity defined at the nodes, which are as yet unknown. We don't know what these nodal values are, but we treat them as values, function values at discrete points, and the variation at all other points is defined in terms of interpolation between these function values at the nodes. And therefore it is important to recognize this step is extremely crucial to identify what are the primary variables and what are the secondary variables of the problem. And if you cannot do that, then we can't really proceed much in the process of construction of finite element approximation. So now, once we have this, we can go back to our equation and see that there are two boundary conditions. One is in terms of primary variable, so this is essential boundary condition. This is essential boundary condition, and this is natural boundary condition. Right? And the function phi hat, the approximation phi hat should be defined as interpolation between nodal values of phi. Right? So essentially what it means is phi hat x is equal to sigma I phi I nix. So this is the interpolation model. So the approximation has to be of this form. Any questions with regard to whatever we have discussed so far?
Sir, can you please tell how to identify the primary variable once again?
Okay. So can you see the, are you clear about how do we develop the weak form of the weighted residual statement?
Yes, sir.
It's only straightforward. Weighted residual statement, that is just a weighting function multiplied by the residual, domain residual integrated over domain, and plus boundary residual multiplied by weighting function. So that is the statement of weighted residual. Now you trade some derivatives from the domain residual term onto the weighting function term. Right? And in one-dimensional problem, that is very simply done by the integration by parts, because the integral involves a product of two functions, and that can be easily evaluated when you integrate it by parts. the derivatives would be traded. And now the question is, when do you stop integration by parts? Because it is a product of two functions, it will remain a product of two functions. You stop integration by parts till the point when you get this particular form, which is symmetric with respect to operator. I mean, if you interchange w and phi hat, nothing changes. If you change if you consider these two terms, these are called symmetric bilinear form. So the place of w and phi, it is a function of w and phi hat, and if you interchange, it really doesn't matter where you place w and which term you place phi hat. The expression doesn't change. So this is what we call as symmetric bilinear form. It is linear in each of these terms, and it is symmetric with respect to the arguments w and phi hat. So you keep on doing this trading of differential until you end up with these symmetric forms. And when you achieve this, then you stop, then you look at the boundary term of this weak form. Whatever is the coefficient multiplier of the weighting function term, so this is the weighting function term w. So multiplier of the weighting function term is what is referred to as the secondary variable, right? And the weighting function term, you substitute whatever is the unknown of the governing differential equation. So in this case, phi is the unknown of the governing differential equation. So you replace w by phi. Weighting function is replaced by phi. So whatever is the form that you get, in this particular case, it remains phi. There is no derivative or any other operator operating on this term, in the boundary term. So that becomes the primary variable. So in this case, phi becomes the primary variable. So phi is the primary variable, and negative of a times d phi by dx is the secondary variable. Does it make sense?
Sir, you mean W is to be substituted in our governing differential equation?
No.
And
No. W is not to be substituted in governing differential equation. Nothing is substituted in governing differential equation. You find out what is the unknown of the governing differential equation. What is the unknown of governing differential
Phi.
equation?
Phi.
So take that unknown and replace W with that unknown in the boundary term of weak form.
Okay.
What is the boundary term?
W into minus a d phi hat by dx.
So wherever you find W in the boundary term, replace that with phi, unknown of the differential equation. What do you get?
Phi into minus a d phi hat by dx.
So now this is again product of two terms. So what you have here, phi, that is the primary variable, and the other term is the secondary variable. And if you relate it to our structural mechanics rod problem, a times d phi by dx is is the axial thrust. So this quantity represents the work done by the boundary force in moving through boundary displacements. Right? So boundary term is always going to be a work quantity in structural mechanics problems. So whatever you have here in terms of W, just replace W by the unknown of the problem. In this case, phi is the unknown, and W appears as in its natural form as W. There are no derivatives or no other operator acting on W here in the boundary term. So that becomes the primary variable. Phi becomes the primary variable. Is it clear or there is still
Yes,
some
sir.
confusion?
Yes, sir. Got it. I got it.
Sir,
And yes,
can't we say directly like whatever is the uh, like unknown function in the governing equation that can be the primary variable because as we are putting directly inside.
uh, no, unknown function is not always the primary variable, and it really depends on the formulation. In this particular, I mean, this is the what we are discussing or what we will cover in this course is what we is the oldest form of finite element method, the finite element method as it originally evolved. But this by no means is the only formulation of finite element method. What you come to regard as primary variable can very well be treated as secondary variable, and what you treat as secondary variable can very well be treated as primary variable in other formulations. And there are certain advantages for doing that in those particular applications, particularly in modeling of incompressible solids and plasticity problems. Right? But those are rather involved topics, and I will not get into that. My objective would be very well served if you understand the basic process of finite element analysis and how finite element model is developed. Once you understand the basic philosophy behind that, you can pick up those advanced concepts, I mean what we call as mixed formulation or flexibility formulation, so to say, on your own. That's not a very difficult job. But the problem you will realize when we discuss, come to two-dimensional and three-dimensional problem, why modeling of incompressible media is such a challenge in this conventional formulation of finite elements. I'll give you an hint just to satiate your curiosity. Uh, what do you call, I mean, what is an incompressible medium? What do you mean by incompressible medium?
Change in density will be zero.
No,
by
no,
its-
not density. Density is not zero. I mean, there is no material which has zero density.
It's a change in density.
Change in density? No, again, once we consider mass is a time invariant, density also doesn't change.
Change in volume.
Change in volume, yes. Its volume should not change. And when does that happen? See, you are all familiar with the Poisson effect. If you stretch a medium, there is a stretch in one direction, other two orthogonal direction, there is going to be a contraction, isn't it? So incompressible medium is when the contraction kind of balances the stretch so that the volume remains same, and that happens only when the Poisson ratio of the material is equal to 0.5. And when you model elasticity problems, you will find a factor of 1 minus twice nu in the denominator. Nu is the Poisson's ratio. So if the Poisson's ratio is 0.5, when your medium is like incompressible medium like rubber, right? Then this leads to a numerical problem. The denominator just blows off. I mean, denominator is 0, so the entire expression blows off. Right? You are looking at a situation like 1 over 0, and obviously computer just goes berserk whenever it encounters something like that, and that cannot be handled. So that is a direct fallout of why this is uh, this formulation that we are doing. It may not always work. I mean, there are different ways of dealing with the problem. The straightforward approach is, why bother about 0.5? We can get a reasonable estimate if I assume Poisson's ratio as something like 0.45 or 0.48, and it should be fine. The other approach is, why bother about the interpolation of displacements and then convert it to strains and then get to the stress strain relationship. We can interpolate stresses directly, right? And when you do that, then you avoid all these problems of Poisson's ratio being equal to 0.5. So those are separate problems, and it's only philosophically little different from what we are discussing in this elementary formulation, but not very difficult to understand once you understand the basic philosophy of finite element in this simpler, I mean the standard formulation of finite element that is historically the way finite element method was has evolved and was developed, originally developed. Right? So, coming back to the question, the unknown of the problem of the governing differential equation need not always be the primary variable, and even for these standard formulation that we are discussing, it is often one of the primary variables. There can be more than one primary variable of the problem. Right? In this particular case, second order differential equation that we are dealing with, our life is much simpler, and we are only dealing with one primary variable, that is phi. Right? So our approximation is of course going to be interpolation model in terms of the primary variable. So I will stop here, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
So,
Yes?
so at the starting of our lecture today, like we had discussed, like as we move towards the final mesh, we'll be moving towards more accuracy.
Yes.
And in the finite precision arithmetic also we had seen that, like as we move towards the lower range numbers, our accuracy will be increased. So, sir, are there links in that?
No. They are not linked. Those are two different issues. The When you are talking with reference to floating point numbers, operation between floating point numbers, you are referring to moving to the small magnitude operations when the operands are smaller in magnitude. So when the operands are smaller in magnitude, then their spacing between two consecutive numbers is smaller, and therefore the round of error is also smaller. Right? In the case of finite element analysis, the finer mesh is not related to that. It is something else. We will see what it means when we discuss the error in the finite element solution.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.